Hello. So, it's me, Aram Ronaldo, and I'm here with
Jonah.
and Jonah and I are just gonna have a quick think tank about when you find yourself in a moment, in a situation, and you have the desire to change someone else's mind. You may have some conflict on the table, and there's a few things. Jonah has some ideas how you approach the situation. So, explain your three-pronged approach. There's one option, another option, and then sort of the backup option when you have tried the others.
Yeah, because this is coming from a place of trying to realign, right? Like what I'm trying to accomplish in my life. Because there are a lot of things that I wish that I could change, but I can't, unfortunately. So, in order to make sure that I stay sane, honestly, I try to apply these three things to the situation. First of all, obviously, I'm trying to change the situation. I'm trying to change someone's mind or thought process, so I change my approach. I try to go about it a different way, maybe present the idea in a different light, in a different context, maybe even empathize. Obviously, before that, I need to listen because I need to understand what it is that I am actually trying to address, but I try to address it in some form or fashion.
So if there was something that was a stressful difference of perspective, let's say in a space, and you wanted to address, then you have to think about whether you know where they're coming from or if you need to find out some more.
Listen. You gotta listen, because if you don't listen, then you don't know what you're addressing. So that's the first thing.
So addressing it is the first option, and the different ways of approaching it.
To try and approach it, exactly. But you can only do that so much. You can do it more than once, you can do it once. You can not do it at all if it's uncomfortable, right? So then the next step is to accept it, right? I am able to readjust how I feel about something, or I can compartmentalize it and I can say, okay, this is how it's going to be for now, or this is how it's going to be always. Am I okay with the way that things are? It's like, sure, it's like it's not a big deal, or it is a big deal. In fact, it's a giant deal. In fact, it could even be potentially life or death for other people. And so but for me right now, it's still mostly philosophical. And so I have to say, okay, well, for my own sanity, for my own progress in life, maybe in some cases for my own safety, I have to accept the situation for what it is.
So it's kind of like deal with it if you can deal with it.
Deal with it.
So the acceptance is the differences of opinion and perspectives may remain, but I can handle it to some extent. That's this acceptance, deal with it, accepting it.
Exactly.
Option.
That's the acceptance. And, very quickly I'll either be able to determine if I'm able to accept it or not. But again, that is something that I can control. I can control accepting it, But sometimes I am not able to control how I feel about something, and therefore I cannot accept it. And therefore there is a third thing that I can do, which I can control, which is to move along from the situation. Whether it's either mentally or physically. Usually it's physically. You know, I am able to leave. I can just say, you know what, I'm not going to have this conversation. And this is not, you know, these three things are not something that can be applied to everything in life. But there are in some cases where it's like, okay, well, these are the things that I can do. So what can I do? Because I can't stay sitting here trying to fight with the person, or I can't stay trying to fight with, you know, be angry about the, you know, whatever. But I can do these three things. So let me try this. Okay, you know what? I'm not even gonna address it. Like, it's just not even worth it. So, and I can't move on at this moment. So I'm just gonna have to accept it. Like, that's it. Or maybe it's, I can't move on and I can't accept it, so I have to try. I have to try. So let me listen and figure out where are they coming from, kind of a thing. Or it's, I have them, you know what, I can't address it. I've already tried to address it. I can't accept it. I have the means to move on, so I'm just gonna go ahead and move on. But notice, in any of those cases, what I can never do is I can never change the mind of the person, or I can never change, you know, I can't force it. I can try, I can offer up the information, but they have to be willing to change. I can't do that for them, right?
You mentioned offering up the information.
Mm-hmm.
So if somebody, if you're listening to what another person is saying, and if they're listening, or if they're not listening, but if there's an information exchange, that might be the best you can do, but it depends on who is receiving what amount of that information.
And sometimes the information exchange is good enough. You know, it's like, I feel like I've done something, and then, you know, and then we move on, you know. But and more specifically, like if it's like something at work, right? It's like, yeah, there's only so much you can do. You know, sometimes you have to try something, and sometimes there's a lot of things you have to accept, because you can't, every time that there's something that shows up that you don't agree with and that makes you angry, you can't just leave the job. You'll be applying the jobs every other week. You know? And then on the flip side of that, there are some really, really actually dangerous situations, or super stressful, or whatever, you know, that this doesn't really apply to, and that requires other strategies. But the good thing is that, from what I found, a lot of the things that we deal with that are stressful, where we think are more dire than they actually are, aren't. And this is how I can view those situations when they are purely philosophical, and try to get through them if they're making me angry. And how I can basically try and live my life and move on. In some wonderful situations, presenting information actually does lead to some sort of change.
I just like that there's options that you can present to yourself, or present, you know, forwardly, and see if any of those work. But thank you for sharing. Those are good opportunities. So we're happy to share it with you and see if anything out of those options works when you're out there in the real world too.
Hopefully so.